Is there anything that you started tinkering with when you were a kid that later drove you to aerospace engineering and Airbus and all of these things? Nobody's there to hold your hand a lot of the time, apart from your parents who have their own sets of biases. The idea of building a bridge between the best of both worlds, right? You just materialize this. You can just do things, you know?
We started Capchase almost by accident. We kind of set two rules as super simple as a concept and idea, and where we can actually make money from day one. For many years in school, I was known as the kid that made the electric eraser. You can shape your reality much more like the people think. Just reach out to people you admire. Nobody does it. Because nobody does it, you'll stand out. Start of the snowball is when you quit your job to pursue that. My time at Airbus confirmed it. I did not like it at all, but it was good because it was a good anti-pill. You know, like this is what I don't want to do. You can have your gaze to the divine, but your feet on the ground and still kind of achieve that.
Welcome, Guli. How are you doing, man? Super excited to have you on.
All good, Ivan. It's good to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Listen, I'm super excited genuinely because I think the world and Spain specifically needs like many more Gulis. It would be amazing if we could find a way to manufacture you, because you're someone who comes from Ferrol, no, a city with 60,000 inhabitants, and has managed to build an important fintech company, deploying billions of euros or dollars to thousands of startups, to helping local talent go to the US through exponential, and building a bunch of projects on the side. And I think you're an inspiration to, and you should be an inspiration to the new generations of people coming behind to show that you can actually build and do things from scratch and have a real impact, no? And also we'll get into it, but how you've navigated your career and decided to pursue entrepreneurship is inspiring. So I just want people to hear your story. So yeah, why don't we start from? I'm going to tell you back to the beginning.
Okay.
And so I know that. Oh, by the way, you're an interviewer's dream, because you have gulipad.com, which everyone should take a look at. A beautiful website, and he basically lays out all of his projects and interests, which is awesome. So I want to go back.
100% vibe coded with the new craze. So
beautiful design. I gotta say, it's really well made. So let's go back to when you were 6. Because you talk about wanting to be an inventor since you were 6. Like where does this childhood curiosity come in Ferrol? No.
Yeah. Actually, I got the map right there. This is a map that mixes Ferrol with Madrid. So yeah, I was born in Ferrol. Very, very common sort of, but I think it's impacted me a lot. Not Ferrol itself, but I was born into a military family. So it's very common for a lot of girls from Ferrol to marry guys that are from the Navy. So my mom and my dad is that story, and that's why I was born there. But the military and family aspect has given me a lot of perspective. We moved around a lot. I think we got to just change the environment very often. And I think there's a couple, like when you're a kid, like you don't get to choose how you're gonna take that in. I was very fortunate that by my nature, I was just very curious, very open-minded, and I love moving around, right? But I mean, Ferrol it's not the most beautiful place, the city, but the surroundings are incredible. It's just beautiful nature, and I think it's inspiring in that sense. So I just but I can't say that I did anything. I was just very lucky to have been born with a lot of curiosity and a will to explore.
And I notice a pattern in people like you that tend to build things or show signs of, high agency when they're in their younger age. Like, is there anything that you started tinkering with when you were a kid that later drove you to aerospace engineering and Airbus and all of these things?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I was just always very drawn to all the stories related to invention or to creation. And I remember reading like very, very young the stories of Edison or Tesla or Armstrong is like an astronaut, which is it's the engineering mindset, and I was always very drawn to that. And um, so I always tinkered. Like I remember in Ferrol we had a house with a tree, and in the tree I would build cranes to lift things up to bring to my little tree house, or when in elementary school when we started. I remember like very, very vividly because for many years in school, I was known as the kid that made the electric eraser. And this
Hmm.
was a little the first sort of invention that I came across, and it was completely accidental. We in school in Spain, you learn circuits when you are maybe like second or third grade in elementary school, and so we made a circuit that was a battery and then an electric motor, and it's fun. And I was trying to make a windmill. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to stick something to the motor that I can stick things into to make a little windmill. And that thing was an eraser because it was soft and you could kind of attach things to it. And it just kind of clicked in my mind. And that was like the very first thing that I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to share it with friends. And everybody was super excited and as excited as a 9-year-old can be. Um, but I think that was sort of the genesis of not of inventing things, but of putting things out there for everybody else to kind of enjoy, you know?
That's awesome. And then before starting inventing more things, you decided to build airplanes, or at least study how to do them, and then go to Airbus. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that was more of I think a very important thing in life is to enjoy what you're doing, and two things like to be very intentional on what you do. It doesn't mean you have to have a grand and master plan, but at least you have to kind of have a sort of North Star. And the second thing is to enjoy it as much as you possibly can, right? And when it came time to choose, hey, what are you going to study? I remember I was kind of like, man, I really like the medical world as well. I've always loved engineering and I've always been drawn to engineering stories. Um, So you gotta make a choice. And I decided not to go through the medical route because it was very, at least in Spain, right? Like when you look outside, it's a little bit different, but it's very close. Like once you're a doctor, you're a doctor forever. I think it's changing a little bit now, but anyway, it was very closed. Whereas if you became an engineer, you could kind of do whatever you wanted, right? And then within that concept of, okay, I'm going to do engineering, I wanted to do something that I was going to really enjoy. And I've always loved aircraft. I was like flying simulators since I was 10. Like my brother and I built rigs in our rooms with like piloting gear and would fly like routes just for fun. So, hey, like, if I'm going to spend the next 4 years of my life kind of, heads down studying, I might as well do it in something that I really, really enjoy. So I decided to go for that route, which is a little bit more specific. And looking back, I might have gone a different route, but it was very beautiful to study. Like, right, it was this is for me it's something that's like there's this elegance to what I studied that I really love, and it made it very enjoyable. Right, I was going to spend 4 years doing something, might as well enjoy it. So it wasn't like a very like, hey, I knew from the very maybe not from the very beginning, but maybe 1 year, year and a half into the degree that I was not going to dedicate my life to engineering, to aerospace engineering. My time at Airbus confirmed it. I did not like it at all, but it was good because it was a good sort of anti-pill. Like this is what I don't want to do. Um, and yeah, but it also really kind of helped lay some foundations in my life of like, hey, hard work and study, and like kind of framework thinking, system thinking, and that sort of thing.
Makes sense. So far, we've got being intentional, pursuing your curiosity, and doing fast experiments to figure out
Hmm.
what's next. Because I think one of the good things that you do with exponential and other things that you do with launching products is, okay, people should pay attention to how you navigate your career. Let's say, because
Yeah.
nobody's there to hold your hand a lot of the time, apart from your parents who have their own sets of biases. But people like you who do fast experiments are intentional about doing them, know that there's not necessarily a sunk cost, and you can always just iterate fast on it. Kind of approaching life with a product mindset is valuable, no?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a way to look at it. I think you have to be very patient in sort of long-term thinking, but very impatient in the day-to-day,
Mm-hmm.
and like iterate fast, move things. Like you kind of said it, right? Nobody's going to hold your hand. Um, but the other thing is that you can shape your reality much more like that people think. Like people think they're just like, leaves in the wind, and you can actually shape a lot of your reality just by doing things. And one example that I give a lot when I'm talking to the younger generation is like, hey, um, just reach out to people you admire. They don't. Nobody does it, and because nobody does it, you'll stand out. I don't know how many emails you like because Ivan, you're like a pretty important figure in the VC space here in Spain. I don't know. I don't think that you get that many messages from young kids like asking. I mean, maybe you do because you have the newsletter and it's a little bit more open, but certainly a lot of the higher level entrepreneurs that I've met along the way, they get some inbound, let's say, but it's not nearly as much as you would imagine. And it's just because people don't realize that they can shape their lives a lot more than they actually can.
Completely agree. I think also it's about how you do that outreach. Because, for example,
Hmm.
I notice the way you've navigated your career, you first try to add value. Like
Hmm.
one thing
Of
I learned
course.
from my friend that helped me in California, the guy from Apple, Jeff.
Hmm.
He's always big about just add value first. I think Silicon Valley is a lot about that also.
Yeah.
Like, people can be fast to ask for an intro for a coffee, but it's not that people won't react positively to that. You might get lucky. Like I've done that before and it's worked,
Hmm.
but there's an opportunity with relatively little effort to get 90% more probability of a
Yeah.
reply or a coffee if you just do something that adds value to them. Like for you, for
100%.
example, at Capchase, if someone wants to talk to you about understanding how to found a company like that, like a fintech company, I'm sure that if they have a quick look at the user experience or a workflow in your product and notice a
Hmm.
pixel moved around, or they have an idea or a couple of iterations on your product strategy, that even if it's 2 lines on a LinkedIn DM, right, it's
Yep.
probably going to catch your attention like 10 times more than, hey, can we have a coffee, right?
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, you have to do it from a perspective of, well, you said it perfectly, of adding value. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Before jumping into your Capchase episode, and I think that's just one of many things that you've done and that you will do that I think are amazing. But before, I want to take a quick side quest
Hmm.
about the influence of San Ignacio de Loyola that has had on your trajectory, because
Yeah.
when I think about it, there's some parallelisms, like and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but this guy from Azpeitia, in the Basque Country, launching kind of like an exponential fellowship of his era, no? So
Yeah, 100%.
I'd love to get your take on this and how it's shaped your trajectory.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, I'm a very religious person, but I think there's it might be slightly controversial, but there's different ways to live religion as well. And I personally really like the way that like San Ignacio kind of lays out. San Ignacio is the founder of the Jesuits. Um, I was not educated in that sort of world. My parents would go to church when we were young, but that's about it. But I've always been very curious about that as well. Like when I was little, my mom thought like she literally thought I was going to be a Jesuit priest for a while when I was very young, like very young. Not I'm not talking about my teenage years or anything like that. And at some point, I ended up going to Jesuit school, and that was very late in my, let's say, my school career. I've gone to many other schools before that because we moved a lot, as I mentioned before. I've been to school in the US, I've been to school in Spain, in the north, in the south, in the center, everywhere. And when I started going to Jesuit school, I also found that they had a very particular way to go around like how you live, right? And the pursuit of excellence. And I found that to be very inspiring as somebody that had kind of followed that path on my own without having an actual framework to kind of think about it. And so when I dug deeper, like the way I would summarize it is that what San Ignacio says is that if you're trying to achieve sainthood, which, as somebody that follows the Catholic faith is sort of the ultimate kind of North Star that you might have, the way you do that is through trying to translate it in my mind to English, but it's through very specific actions. Like you can have your sort of your gaze to the divine, but your feet on the ground, and still kind of achieve that sainthood. No? And it talks about that pursuit of, like, Saint Ignacio talks about that pursuit of excellence, and kind of looking at the divine through a very mundane perspective. Like, the way I would summarize it is, you have to act with, in Spanish is amor al arte, no? It's
Hmm.
you have to act with,
Craftsmanship.
yeah, basically it's that craft and specific action, and doing things with care, like caring,
Hmm.
giving a shit, is that how to say it in English, um, is actually a very good way to achieve that sainthood, no? And so that for me is very inspiring, and it makes it much easier to put craft, and to put effort, and to put intention, again, into what I do. You're doing it for a greater cause, almost. Um, so it's really shaped my life in that way, and it makes it very easy to do things, because I'm pursuing something that's just, it's not just money, or it's not just, it's intention.
Makes sense. You write about how you do something is how you do everything on the
Hmm.
Gully pad.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the core values that you talk about also there, consistency, kindness, simplicity, and curiosity, kind of have poured it over probably where you work and the startups that you've worked
Hmm.
at, like Geolink, which
Hmm.
is an amazing talent hub and magnet, where I think which was a great school for a lot of entrepreneurs, like
Yeah.
most of the Capchase founders, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
But also, and then maybe we can use this as a segue. Like, I've read your article on culture as a superpower at
Hmm.
Capchase. No? So
Hmm.
if you can give us like, what does Capchase do today, and then we'll talk about the culture and how you got there.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty cool story. I mean, we started Capchase almost by accident. Um, we started Capchase because we were stuck in our MBAs, or about to do the MBA. We're four, like, to put a little bit of context, this was 2020. We're four founders. Three of us met at GeoBlink, which, as you said, huge talent hub. There's also, I think, Revenis JM invested, so
Mm-hmm.
you know them well. They're also kind of from that GeoBlink school of entrepreneurship. Um, and so Miguel and Luis had left to do their MBA a little bit earlier that year. I had already left my job because I was also going to do my MBA in 2020. Pandemic hits, and so we were kind of at an impasse. Like, what do we do, right? And Miguel and Luis have kind of been juggling some ideas while they were at their MBA, and we'd come from a very, let's say, like, GeoBlink is a company that makes a very complex product. It's awesome to learn, because building complex products is also complex. Um, but what's even harder is selling it. When you have something that's very complex from a product perspective, sometimes the value can get sort of lost in translation. And some people get it, and it's great because it's an easy sell. But a lot of people don't, especially if they're very old school, or they're very sort of focused on old methods of doing things. And so when it came time to build their own thing, we were kind of, okay, we're going to build something that is, um, we kind of set two rules: that is super simple as a concept and idea, um, and where we can actually make money from day one. Maybe not profit, but at least bring in revenue from day one, and have fast iteration loops. Um, and that could, that sort of was only possible now. So there's like this confluence with these three factors that are very difficult to find, but we had time to think about it, and kind of, and Captures was sort of what came out of there. Like, for us, it was fintech, because in fintech you can just charge a fee, so you make money from day one. It was a very simple concept. You're selling money. Like your product is not the software. The product is money. What you're innovating is in the distribution, right? It's just how you get access to that product. Um, and the problem it solved, we'd really suffered it in our own kind of flesh and bones back at GeoBlink, because GeoBlink was um an early stage company selling very expensive software that was hard to build. And so what happened was at GeoBlink was that we would have these really big contracts, but they were paid out quarterly, or like basically our revenue was stuck in the future. And we'd seen our CEO Jaime kind of figure out his way around financing, try to push fundraising as far as possible to achieve a better deal and less dilution. We've kind of suffered the consequences of having hard to sell software, that is expensive and that is paid out in the future. We kind of seen how that makes startups sort of be constrained, or suffer. And we said, hey, like there's got to be a better way for this. And back then there was an article called "Debt is Coming" by Alex Danko, which, by the way, is a great, like, he's a great thinker. If kind of in the sort of Ben Thompson, Tim Urban school of thought, very very cool to read. And he put out this article called "Debt is Coming," and it just made a ton of sense. So Capchase was sort of the confluence of a solution to a problem we'd felt very closely, that we could make revenue from day one, and that was simple to understand. Like everybody understood what the product was. So from there it was very very easy to move very quickly.
Makes total sense. So the arc is MVP in 11 days with a $7 server.
Yeah.
Today, 2 billion deployed.
Hmm.
Awesome. If you bring it down super tactically for people who might be at a GeoBlink today equivalent,
Okay. Okay.
when you have talent around you and you feel things, this is how ecosystems are born, right? Like
Yeah. Totally.
nodes, flywheels, spillover
Hmm.
effects.
Hmm.
Tactically, what did you do to bring together or work together or identify this group of people that you're
Hmm.
going to found with? Like, what are the specific steps that you took? Was it over coffee? Did you decide to take a weekend away? Like, what pushed this? What got the rock like going downhill? No.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. And I think we got very lucky, to be frank, in that sense, because it was very much catalyzed by COVID. Like we had already done the hardest thing to do, which is leave your job. Leaving your job is sort of the make it or break it moment, because it's a very hard thing to do. And it's even harder to do if you've got big responsibilities. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking of my friend Fer, and I'm like, dude, this guy's a hero, man. Like, he quit his job with with a kid and another one on the way, and his co-founder Pablo with like 4 kids already, to pursue this thing. Like, our case was much easier. Like, we'd already left our jobs to do the MBA. We had already saved up some money for that specific time period in our lives, so we could spend some time without earning, and it made it very easy. But I think that is also offset today by how much easier it is to build now than it was before. So for me, the sort of start of the snowball is when you quit your job to kind of pursue that. I think, again, you have to be very intentional with what you do, and you have to be very real. I see too many young people, and this is one of the reasons why we started Exponential, um, make the mistake of starting something too quickly and going all in too fast without having garnered the three things that I think are really important when you're building, which is, one, obviously, is the raw talent, or the capacity. I say it's like capacity, capital, and connections. And you really got to have those three things. And they're not things that you get overnight. Like, we spent 4 years working at GeoBlink, learning from really top talent, not just within GeoBlink, but within the ecosystem as a whole, which was in a very particular position in Spain back in 2016 to 2020. We spent 4 years compounding connections, compounding access to capital, understanding how products work, understanding how distribution works, understanding how sales works. Like, um, we're very intentional in acquiring all of that before pulling the trigger. And even then, it was like sort of um, you know, it was something that's nerve-wracking. Um, and I'm not saying that to discourage people from jumping in. Like, I think what I'm trying to say is that you have to be very sort of organized in how you do it, and not just do it just because, you know? Um, yeah.
Amazing. I think there's a lot of high agency in there also,
Hmm.
especially in a location like Spain, which is a less mature startup ecosystem.
Yeah.
Europe generally, and we're getting there, but it is harder to fight against going to management consulting,
Yeah.
investment banking. Also, not everybody should be in entrepreneurship, and
Nope.
even less people should be in the venture path, right?
Hmm.
But we probably could do with more entrepreneurs across the board. And
Yeah.
as you say, and rightly so, do not underestimate the work and the intention they have to put behind before you actually do the jump.
Hmm.
Can we go into a little bit, this culture superpower? Because I think it's also related to this high agency bit that you
Yeah.
exhibit. I think, it's like you talk about a few cultural points. You have intellectual humility, builder attitude, yes
Hmm.
before no, disagree and commit, work
Hmm.
smart and hard,
Hmm.
refer to a story on culture. Yeah, like this.
Yeah.
This is it. No, like focus on culture, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is going to be more relevant than ever, right? Because cost of building things is dropping very quickly. And so what's going to differentiate you is the communities you can build and how well you can distribute your products and your team, your velocity. I will say there is many, like for example, intellectual community, right? That was one of our core values, still is. Um, that's a negotiation. Like other companies don't have that, and it's fine. Like when I think about Uber, for example. Uber has a much cutthroat killer culture, and it works. So there is no right or wrong culture. But you do have to be very consistent. And the culture that you choose, you have to really kind of like double down on it and make choices based on it because your tribe is going to be defined by those rules. And and so if you try to change them along the way, like you're gonna get friction. If you're not true to them, like if you are preaching one thing and then doing another, that's gonna cause friction. And it really is a differentiator. And in the very early days of Capchase, that's very much the case, right? We wrote that document very early on. So we started the company, I think it was April of 2020, May. And we wrote that document, I think in November, something November, December, when we had around 10, 15 people. It was okay, like what makes these like why did these people jump on board? Like why did they choose us and why did we choose them? Um, and that's what came out of it, right? Like that intellectual humility, that builder attitude, which is just short or another word for high agency. That disagreement commit. We wanted people that would raise their hand, but disagree and commit. Sometimes people only kind of they understand it as, hey, you're gonna need people that will be okay with disagreement, but it's a little bit more than that. Like that has disagreement before that. Like you need people to dissent, people that will disagree, people that will challenge things. Um, so all those things, and of course, working very hard. That was another thing that I think set Captures apart for a very long time, right? Like we were working like crazy. And I think sometimes people talk about work-life balance and things like that. Like we were looking for people that would choose not to have that. Um, and there is again, like there's cultures for everyone. I've seen other companies that have 4-day working cultures. It's fine if they can make it work. It's not that, and I'm also seeing now companies that have 996 that are doing amazing, that work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. So it's all about, I think, again, it's all about consistency and making sure you have clarity on the kind of people you want to bring. Um, and that kind of really drill and double down on what your values are. Um, because otherwise, like the moment you stop being consistent with that, you lose a lot of your soul as a company, and it really is a differentiator.
I love yes before no. We had something similar at Facebook, which was kind of
Hmm.
nothing else, someone else's problem.
Hmm.
Um, it's very powerful, and culture is so much more than just a document. I think people underestimate massively.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It's one of the most powerful levers in any organization, and the fact that you wrote it so early on probably had a big impact. Like putting in a
Yeah.
document.
And it really helped. Like one of the things I always say, it really helped. Like, there was a point where I'd say around 35% of hires would specifically mention that document as the reason they wanted to interview in the first place.
Interesting.
Um, I think people that are talented are attracted to sort of that agency to like to say, hey, this is how we do things. It's okay if you don't like it, but this is how we do things. And if you do fit into this sort of rubric, come on board. If I had to choose one value today, if I had to summarize it today, I would say is back to San Ignacio, no? It's to give a shit. Like all you need is people that really care about what they're doing.
100%, and it's probably related to people more than anything in my experience.
Hmm.
Cool. Like let's wrap this up a little bit with the exponential fellowship, man. Like can you tell us? I remember we went to a dinner together, and I found out that you were thinking about this, and
Hmm.
it's something that had been in my mind for a long time also. And the idea of building a bridge between the best of both worlds, right? Like I
Hmm.
think Europe, Spain specifically, and core innovation ecosystems like Silicon Valley specifically, New York also, but it is kind of a power law.
Yep.
And you just materialize this, which I think
Hmm.
is just more in the line of, you can just do things,
Yeah.
and tell us about this, because I think
Yeah.
this is one of the most amazing things to come out of the ecosystem.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, look, that was just again, like you could just shape things into reality. We were talking about that before. And this for me is something like very personal that I really wanted to do for a long time. Um, so the story is like it's kind of like this. Like you shared, I wonder if in the edit you could put it in it. You shared yesterday a chart that to me is is very sad. And that chart is last 50 years, companies that have been built in the US and Europe, and their value. And man, I think there were at least 10 circles in that little bubble chart that were bigger than the entire European circle of companies. Um, and I think, man, it's just, we cannot miss that train. Like we've already kind of sort of missed it in the software era. We're now entering a new, an era that's going to be even more deeply governed by power laws. So we're going to be in one or the other, man. We're going to be either on the good end of the power law or on the bad end of the power law. And so, I was thinking from my perspective, hey, like, what can I do to change this? And I've been very fortunate to live through realities, right? On one hand, I sort of was born in the Spanish ecosystem. It was a very special time as well in the Spanish ecosystem. I mean, you know it very well, right? Like 2012 to 2018, 2019 was the absolute blossoming of the Spanish tech scene. Like J.M. was born during that time period, Kibo, K Fund, all the VC funds, and well, not all of them, but many of them. I think Nauta maybe was like 10 years earlier, but like the sort of the blossoming happened in that time period. And I was very fortunate to come out of my degree um, um, at a time when, for the first time, I think in Spanish history, you could think about building a career in startup land and you weren't that crazy anymore. Like, yeah, maybe you get like my mom was appalled. And she hooked me up with calls with like her friends that were partners at Price. And, and I called and I chatted with them. They were, no, you just go to McKinsey, you know. But I had done like, this is one very important thing. I had done my homework, right? Like I wasn't just some kid who was like, oh, this is the first startup I see. I'm gonna jump into it. Like I'd spent 2.5 years during my degree exploring this blossoming scene, kind of understanding who was building cool stuff. Um, And I was again very intentional in selecting GeoBlink as a place to be. The good thing is that back then, I think it was a Goldilocks zone where you had very few teams because again, like you had to be a little bit crazy at least to get to startup land. So you had very few teams. People that were there were doing it because they loved it, because there wasn't that much capital as there is now. Like they were really they were really on a mission, right? And so the result of that was that these few companies, I don't know, I can think of OnTruck, I can think of GeoBlink, I can think of Glow, maybe Cabify. Like there were few companies that concentrated a lot of talent, and not just talent, but very high agency talent, people that were also on a mission. And so I was very lucky to live that. But then I think in Spain we have a couple of constraints, which I'll get to in a minute. Then I went the other route, which I went to the US. I had already been like the US culture was already a big part of me because I'd gotten to live in the US. I'd gone to school in the US when I was 10 to 13, I was there. The US culture was very rooted in me. The internet culture was very rooted in me. And so it was very natural transition to go and try something in the US. Capchase was that. And then I saw that other side of the coin, like, holy moly, we are artificially constraining ourselves. Like, there's nothing, like in Spain, I think we have two problems. The first problem is that we don't think big enough, which is easy to say. But I think the reason is not that we're not ambitious. I think it's the reason is that we think that the Spanish market is very big and it's not. So you weren't like, because this doesn't happen in the Nordics. Like, where did the Nordics get Skype and Spotify and and Klarna? It's because the Nordics are tiny. Like, so nobody in their right mind would think of starting something for the Nordics. So they go global from day one. And I think Spain is this mid-sized market where when you're young and you haven't sort of yet gone out there into the world, you think that it's a big market, and so you don't think globally from the get-go. You just like, oh, I'm gonna build the Spanish copycat to whatever company, and I'm gonna scale it in Spain. If Spain gets too small, maybe I'll go to LATAM. Which by the way, LATAM is not even like what is LATAM anyway, right? Like um, LATAM is kind of like saying Europe. It's like 27. Like Europe is 27 countries. It's not one single consolidated market. So anyway, problem one is the lack of a global mindset from day one, and problem two, I think, is that because we haven't had those huge outcomes, we tend to sell too early and too small, right? So we have a lot of sub 100 million or 100 million ish outcomes. These are great for the founders, but they don't start a snowball effect. I think the snowball effect starts when your employees get rich. Um, and it's kind of like like an atomic bomb, like a neutron chain react, like a chain reaction, right? You need great outcomes to kickstart the next generation of great companies, right? I think the talent is there, and we're kind of seeing it. Like we're kind of seeing this very weird thing in Spain where, well, that's not weird, but we have a lot of founders spin off of great companies. Like we see a lot of Globo spin-offs, we see a lot of Cabify sort of spin-offs, and Endeavor made a great report on the multiplier effect, I think they called it. I think our multiplier effect is super capped because we're not getting good financial outcomes. So, so those are the two things that I think are constraining Spain, but they are artificial constraints. There's no reason why we can't have kids thinking globally from day one. So that's sort of where exponential comes in. I kind of saw this problem back in 2023. Well, I mean, I kind of had it in my mind from longer than that, but 2023 was the moment I could finally do something about it. And and I think like with very little effort, you can get so much leverage. And so what we're doing at Exponential is two things. We have the fellowship. The fellowship for me, the goal of the fellowship is to be a beacon. It's like, hey, there's this lighthouse here that's shining to attract people to this concept that you can just do things. And we choose 5 to 10 every year. We send them to the US, to companies in San Francisco, to companies in New York, with the goal that they kind of open their eyes and see, man, I can really just do things. Like there's nothing differentiating me from that guy that's on TBPN talking about, whatever cool new thing they've built. There's no difference. Like the talent is the same. They're no smarter than I am. They're just more ambitious, and they're more, or they have like they don't have they have an unconstrained view of the world, you know. And so we said actually like so far I'm pretty happy. We've sent seven so far. Two of them already have gone through YC. I think there's a third one that's going to apply right now. So very soon we're going to have like 40% of the other cohort on the entrepreneurship side. And there's more news coming, I think, from that cohort. So very cool stuff. Um, and the second thing is the community, right? The second thing is, okay, this is the shining beacon to attract everybody. What do we attract them to? Well, we attract them to the exponential community with just a bunch of young, ambitious people, like girls and like guys and girls that just want to get stuff done. And we put them in a WhatsApp group and they hope that things happen, you know? The goal of exponential really is just to give a little bit of order to talent in Spain, right? And make sure that more people learn about startup land as a career path. And hopefully, if we do that early enough, and we put them in the right teams, expose them to their experiences, we're going to see much bigger outcomes 5 years down the line. You know, hopefully that blip, that chart that you showed, can start shifting. And I think you don't need that many people doing that many things, because again, like these are things that are governed by power laws. So as long as we get enough people in that trajectory, and it doesn't have to be that many, it's going to be already a huge shift.
Huge. I think it's amazing. The thing that you mentioned on not knowing what you don't know, and one of the patterns that I see of people thinking 10 times, 100 times bigger is having been to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You can say a lot of things about the US, but one thing you can't say is that they're freaking amazing at being at the Ted Lasso effect.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't have that in Europe generally. Maybe we need a little bit more of that Ted Lasso, optimism and,
Well, the thing is, like, I think we, like, what gets on my nerves, let's say, is like we're artificially constraining ourselves. We could be Spain specifically, because Europe, of course, as a whole, but Spain specifically, like, this is one of the best places in the world to live. Like, man, I've been to the US many times. There's no comparison. Well, I mean, maybe in some places there is, but like, we have an amazing culture. We have an amazing, like, we have all kinds of like, you can configure your life however you want in a country like Spain. We just need to be a little bit more, I think, a little bit more mindful of excellence, really double down on people that want to get things done, let them cook, right? And I think Spain will be in a much better place in a few years.
100%. So you're helping people think 100 times bigger by showing them what's possible with the lighthouse effect. And then you're putting together, sorry, this is zooming in, but like, you're basically doing like a particle acceleration space where, particles are colliding. So things happen. So you're replicating the GeoBlink effect in a community where you're taking it to the internet and making things happen, which I think is the way. And you're also applying product thinking to solving this problem, which is pretty cool.
Totally. And like things are starting to happen even outside which I really love. Like, one thing we also don't realize is that outside of Madrid and Barcelona, there's very little things. And another thing that was very frustrating for me was to talk about people from Coruña, which is very near where I'm from, that have a ton of potential. Like, they're like extremely sharp kids, and they do not know what a startup is at all. And suddenly you kind of give them two links, like, hey, like, pull on this thread, like, follow Ivan. Look at what Ivan is posting, or Jaime Novoa or whatever. Like, maybe go read some Paul Graham essays, and they come back in a month and they're like, whoa, like, I've been missing all this stuff. and they pull on the thread very quickly. So getting the word out there, it's kind of like evangelizing in a way. It's not that hard, and it can really shape many people's lives. So I think the back to compounding effects and those power laws, like very little effort today, especially when you're acting um, very early in the careers of these people, can have like I'm very excited to see what effects it has down the line because I'm already kind of seeing like, some of these, I don't know. There's one kid from Coruña that like we kind of got him like hooked up into into a YC startup, and he called me the other day and was like so grateful, but also so excited about all the things he can now do with his life that he didn't even think like they weren't. It's not that he didn't think he could do them. It's that he didn't know they existed. So just didn't know what he didn't know. And suddenly, like with a very tiny effort, like tiny effort, they get to pull on threads, and if they're curious and high agency, the world is their oyster,
100%. Thank you for being a catalyzer for the ecosystem, man. Where can people find you? Where should they follow you?
They can find me. Well, they can find me on Twitter, I guess. Guli Moreno. On LinkedIn, shoot a message. Like Ivan said, add a little bit of value, right, in the prompt. Um, and I think that's mostly where they can find me.
100%. And everybody, if you're listening to this, check out the Exponential Fellowship as well. If it's for you, or at least pull on those threads that Guli left for you on the ground. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Guli.
Thank you.
Speak
Appreciate it.
soon.
Cheers.